Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Introduction to English Literature. Uh, Hope your iftar was delicious and that your fasting day was not as difficult as mine. I really suffered today, and this is why I'm recording this late. Um, so today is lecture 16. We are going to three new poets. Um to wrap up this age and finish this age. Okay, so again, we said the Commonwealth and the Restoration is um, a very small era, uh, يعني regarding the time, but very important one because again, so many political events happened during this age. First, we had the king. Then he was removed. He was kicked out after the Civil War, and then we had the Commonwealth. You know, so the ruler of England is no longer a king. We have a Cromwell, right? A leader is not a king, more like a prime minister or something, or a president. Okay, and then we said that he was succeeded by his son, and we commented about this, how ironic it is. And then his son was not as strong as him. I'd love to believe that even if his son was strong, he will not be as strong as his father because his father, he's the leader, he's the founder um, of the Commonwealth. So then they kicked him out, and the parliament decided to bring back the king. Also, we said that in a way, the English people, the English mentality was in a way connected to the monarchy. People are used to have a king. Okay, until this very day in England, they still have a queen, the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth. Even though she almost has no power, okay, no authority, she, she cannot decide anything. It's all up to the parliament and to the government. But still they have a queen because in a way they are used to have a monarch uh, in the country, and this is why they decided to bring back the king. And then we said how the religion of the king was a Catholic. The next king was Catholic. So we talked about the glorious revolution, the bloodless revolution. So many events during this period, so many political events, especially. And we said that some of these events, the execution, the killing of the king, it happened before in literature. Can we say that the fiction, the literature, okay, became reality in a way? What people you used to, enjoy watching and reading about became their actual reality, their actual political situation. And also, some of the poets, some of the authors became politicians. We talked about Marvel and John Milton, right? So their poetry, their literature uh, became, in a way, everyone's became part of everyone's life because they became politicians, parliament members of the parliament. They became like Milton, a minister, a secretary for Cromwell. Okay, uh, and this is how literature and the literary figures affect reality. And still the same, we noticed how the literature of the time of the Commonwealth and the Restoration eras, how the literature was affected, was influenced with the political situation, right? Everything in a way is related to politics. Even love is, as we said, connected um, to politics. Today we will move to the last figures and the last theme of this era. And let me remind you of this. When we say that this era has a certain number of themes, it doesn't mean that every text and every extract has to include all these features, all these themes. No, you have one, two, sometimes three, okay? Maybe more, maybe less. Maybe some texts won't have any feature of their eras, okay? Because again, remember our friends, the metaphysicals, almost none of the features of the Renaissance uh, poetry was in their poetry. Okay, this is why they have unique features that that are exclusive for the metaphysical poets. Okay, today we will start with John Bunyan, John Dryden, and we have John even what's his name? John Wilmot. Okay, so three Johns. And already last time we had John Milton. So many Johns, okay? So in order to not confuse yourselves, don't focus on the first name, focus on the second name and the last name. Bunyan, Dryden, and Wilmot. Okay, and we'll talk about satire. Okay, but before we go, can you look at this guy? This is Bunyan. Okay, this is the poet John Bunyan. Um, from his look, from his appearance, can you think uh, of his personality? Okay, um, can you guess the poetry he writes from the way he looks, from the way he dresses? Okay, can you guess what what type of writing, what type of poetry he produces? Okay, think about this. Uh, so what is satire? We said that we have Bunyan, Dryden, Wilmot, and satire. What is satire? Do you know what does satire mean? Satire, harsh criticism, you know, offensive criticism in a way. And we, the Arabs, the Arab poets, the Arabic poetry is full of satire here and there. Okay, today's lecture is a very short lecture. Um, we will discuss Bunyan and just only one of his texts. Then we will move to satire, starting with John Wilmot, and then the most important critic, one of the most important critics of the history of English literature, John Dryden. John Dryden, then we will move to the discussion. Okay, so this is John Bunyan. His first text is The Pilgrims Progress. You know what's a pilgrim? Okay. Sorry. What's a pilgrim? Um, even us, the Muslims, we have a pilgrimage. You know, the Christians, they have a pilgrimage. We talked about this when we discussed the Canterbury Tales. The Pilgrim's Progress. واحد برمضان بيستغل أي دقيقة عشان يشرب مية بالليل. ايش تقولوا عني صايم الدنيا مفتر الدنيا ليل ها توزعوا عني بعدين للحكومة. Okay, we have the Pilgrim's Progress uh, by John Bunyan. Uh, again, the pilgrim, is a traveler in a religious journey. You know, so a pilgrimage هو الحج يا جماعة. فالpilgrim هو الحاج. Okay, the person who travels in a religious journey. Okay, um, so the Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. This text is probably one of the most famous texts during that era, and to this very day, to this day, this text is still read and sang in the church as a hymn. Some extracts from the text. by John Bunyan. Okay, can you imagine how important this is? So from his look, I don't know if you noticed this, but he looks like more of a religious person, right? More of a religion's man, you know, from the way he dresses, from the way he looks. Um, so yes, this text sometimes people confuse some lines from his text to be lines from the Bible. Okay, because they are religious, they are used in the churches, and everything about them is religious. And in a way, they look like, they sound like the Canterbury Tales. So, you know, we have the Middle English literature, then we have the Renaissance, and then now we are in the Restoration era, in the Commonwealth and the Restoration era. But some poets, including John Bunyan and in a way Milton, they went back not to the Renaissance, but to the Middle English literature in their writing. So they went back in time instead of going forward, instead of going further. They in a way went back, and this text also uses the you know, the dream vision. We talked about this in so many religious texts during the dream of the road, if you remember, during the Middle English literature era. So again, this text goes back to the past, um, to the Christian medieval texts, and the text is an allegory. I don't know. So many people confuse or get confused um, when they, you know, between allegory and symbolism. What's the difference between allegory and symbolism? Now, there is no clear-cut answer to this question. I don't want you to get confused, but generally, when we say symbolism, we're talking about one one item, one thing. So we have a story, a poem, a short story, a novel, a book, and we have, for example, a dove, or we have, I don't know, for example, a dove. This could be a symbol of peace, a symbol. So one thing, the dove is a symbol of peace. We could have a cat. This cat could be a symbol of children, or of women. Okay, so one thing could be a symbol of another thing. But when we say this text is an allegory, remember allegory of imperialism. Now we have an allegory here. Remember أحمد شوقي's برز الثعلب يوما في ثياب الواعظين. So these are allegories. Why? Because the whole text is symbolic. Okay, the whole text is an allegory in a way or another. So everything represents something else in the text, and it's used a lot in the literature of children. Okay, and also sometimes in other literatures. So we have Animal Farm, for example. This is an allegory because there are animals who talk, who have a country, who have a revolution. This is an allegory in a way, discussing the Soviet Union and the you know, the communism, uh, and all these ideas and countries and governments and revolutions, all in a story of some animals. So this is allegory. So here the Pilgrim's Progress is also an allegory. إذا حد يحضر المحاضرة بالنهار I'm really sorry يعني. آه، يعني تزعلش. In this text, The Pilgrim's Progress, we have characters who are named in, and this was famous during the medieval times, the Middle English literature. They were not named after normal persons, people. No, here we have a character called Christian. Christian. Um, a character called the Giant Despair. A character called what else do we have? Other characters? No, they are mentioned in your books. In your book, the characters in Bunyan's uh, text. You have you have Christian, you have the Giant Despair, you have the Sloth of Despond, you have the Vanity Fair, okay, and other characters. Can you see this in page 61? Here you have a picture of the Giant Despair, where Christian and there is Hopeful, another character, trying to escape from the Giant Despair. Okay, uh, and see this. This is what we mean when we say it's an allegory. It's more of a text that teaches people, good values, teaching people religious values. Uh, so this is Christian, so he's the good guy. This is the Giant Despair. This is the bad guy. Another character is called Envy, also another bad character. So they are even named after the sins. We have something similar in Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. One of the scenes we have the seven sins. This is a religious. If you watch the movie Seven, this is a religious concept, Christian concept. You have the seven sins, okay, the major seven crimes or sins in Christianity. Okay, and in the play we have seven characters named after these seven sins. Okay, so something similar here. We have the giant despair. We have so many other characters with these names clearly, and uh, we had something similar in school. Remember a play, in school, al izaa, with characters. Everyone is has this kind of name. Um that refers to some value where always the good wins and the evil is defeated at the end of the day. Okay. uh, so again, the use of dream vision, going back to the medieval literature, we have Christian, the character going in a pilgrimage, a journey, a religious journey, having some enemies including the giant despair. And at the end of the day, this text teaches religious values. And again, some people confuse it with the Bible. We have here this extract from the Pilgrims Progress, uh, very famous, still used to this very day in churches. There is no discouragement shall make him once relent his first avowed intent to be a pilgrim. Nothing will stop him from being a pilgrim. Okay, now let's move to satire and start with John Wilmot. Okay, so what's the satire? Satire, um, when you criticize someone harshly in an offensive way, al-hija in Arabic, شعر الهجاء. And Arabic is very famous with satire, satirical poetry. Jarir and Al-Farazdaq, they always satirized each other, attacking each other using poetry. We have this a lot in Arabic. A poem is where it's all about praising the poet's, country, or the poet's family, or his people. He's praising himself and his people, and also attacking other people, the other country, or the other family, or someone else. Okay, and this is famous in Arabic poetry, and maybe you are the masters of satire poetry. Okay, uh, and we have this a lot even with the kings. When we had two or three different Islamic countries uh, in the Islamic world. So a poet who is close to some Khalifa would satirize another Khalifa that is, the enemy of this one. Very famous, very used in. I'm sure you know a lot of satirical poems. Can you mention one of them in the comments on the Facebook comments? Um, a satire poetry that you love, that you know in Arabic. So this is by John Wilmot. A satire against mankind. You know mankind? The people, بني آدمين يعني. A satire against mankind. What's he saying? You have a typo in your book. It's not God, it's dog. I'd be a dog, a monkey, or a bear. It'd be a dog, a monkey, or a bear. Or anything but that vain animal who is so proud of being rational. I prefer to be a dog, a monkey, or a bear, any animal, anything other than being a human. Okay? So, he's criticizing humans, he's criticizing humanity, in a way, criticizing people, everyone, even the name of the poem, a satire against mankind. What do you think? Do you prefer to be a dog, a monkey, or a bear, or anything but to be a human? Why is he saying this? What is he trying to communicate with us? Can we look at the rhyme scheme of this poem? We have bear, animal, rational. We have A, B, B, right? Um, uh, okay, this Wilmot, uh, it's your book is talking about Wilmot. He was a rake. You know what's a rake? Rake is someone, he drinks a lot. He um, uh, kind of person who's always concerned about pleasures, uh, not serious. People don't take him seriously in a way or another. So he was a rake. He was all about, drinking alcohol, all the kind of pleasures here and there. Um, and in his poetry, he's always rude, and satirizing society, satirizing the monarchy, even the king. Okay, uh, he's talking about him, a merry monarch, scandalous and poor. He's describing King Charles the second, a merry monarch. Merry monarch. Yani he's all about fun and playing and joking, not a serious person. Scandalous. Scandalous. He loves scandals. What's a scandal? A scandal is يعني فضيحة. You know, he's scandalous. He loves searching for scandals here and there. And poor. Okay, poor, weak. Okay. Uh, so this is our guy, John Wilmot. Again, what's satire? It's when you use humor sometimes, you use irony, you use exaggeration, something like this, to expose and they criticize some people, even because you think they're stupid, so you're making fun of them, or because they're bad. Okay, they have bad morals, and this is why you criticize them. Uh, Now, in your book, in page 63, there is some mention of um, Don Quixote. Don Quixote, the last three lines. Okay, this was maybe you talk about this later, but I'd love if you read this paragraph. Satire became an important kind of poetry because it looks wittily, wittily smart at the manners and behaviors of society, and very often uses real people and situations uh, to make its humorous point. There's a poem by Samuel Butler mentioned here, uh, and it's mentioned that it's a mock romance, a mock romance. Don Quixote, even Arabic, Don Quixote, okay, very famous mock parody one of the first parodies of in history. It's good to have an idea about this. Okay, just read this, the last paragraph in page 63, not the first one. Leave the first one and maybe the first two. Just read the last one. Let's move to our last poet of this era. We will go back to him, by the way, John Dryden. Uh, John Dryden, guys, is one of the most important critics in the history of England. Okay, and one of the important poets as well, John Dryden. I remember Dr. Ayman, Dr. Ayman al-Halaq, he will teach you next year maybe. He once told us that he doesn't like the Augustan poetry. And this is why I always remember Dryden, because of this comment. He says that he's more into romantic literature, not Augustan literature, not neoclassical poetry. No, I'm sorry, not neoclassical poetry. Why? Because the neoclassical poetry is dry. He says even their names are dry. See, he's Dryden. Even his name is dry. So I always remember Dryden, remembering this comment by Dr. Ayman. So this is John Dryden, a very again famous poet and critic. Maybe we talk about him soon, later. But now let's go to his poetry. He was because again he's a critic. He was very satirical. He satirized everyone, everywhere. يعني almost literally everyone. Okay. Now here he's making a political satire. He's saying plots, true or false, are necessary things to raise up commonwealths and ruin kings. This is a political comment. What's a plot? A plot again. Um, we talked about plots in literature. We have the arrangement of the events in a novel or a short story. This is the plot, الحبكة. But also a plot is a conspiracy. Could mean a conspiracy. So when you plot against someone, you conspire against them. Okay, مؤامرة. So plots are necessary things. Plots, true or false, are necessary things to raise up commonwealths and ruin kings. This is from Absalom and Achitophel. Don't confuse this with Sir Philip Sidney's Astrophel and Stella, okay? The names are in a way similar, so don't confuse them. Okay, this is in your books, page 60, 65, top of the page. Okay. Your book talks about him. He was a poet laureate, Amir al-Shara, in a way, in during the time of King James II. Talks more about his poetry, and because again he was a critic, he was a poet and a playwright, but basically a critic and a poet. And talking about one of many of his poetry, where he praised Cromwell on his death, and then he was uh, okay a rival because to the king, because he um, became a Catholic, and then he was forced to leave the country and lost um, his title. He's no longer the poet Laureate. I'm sorry. Okay, you can read about this, how he was in the side of Cromwell, not uh, not the king, and how the king hated him. And this is one of his extracts where he satirizes his making a comment on the political situation of that era. But more importantly, this extract uh, by from Mac Flickon, another text by John Dryden. So this text, he's criticizing a poet called Chadwell. He was a critic, So he's criticizing a poet, another poet colleague called Shadwell. He's saying the rest to some faint meaning make pretense, but Shadwell never deviates into sense. What's he say? What is he saying? The rest, maybe he's saying, sorry, maybe he's saying the rest of the poets, okay, the rest of the writers, the poets might make sense sometimes, might say something good sometimes. So all of them are bad. Everyone is bad there, but maybe the rest of the poets maybe can sometimes say something good. بتصدف معهم. You know, by accident they might say something like, for example, if someone who's not a poet would write like 1,000 texts, maybe one line from here or there would be good, would be fine, would be beautiful. So he's saying that the rest of the poets maybe sometimes could make sense, could make something good. But Chadwell, this guy, this poet, never deviates into sense. He's not saying that Chadwell uh, too much. He's not saying that Chadwell never makes sense. He doesn't say that Chadwell is always stupid, is always nonsensical. No, he's saying not even by accident could he make sense. So he doesn't make sense, and not even by accident could he ever make sense. Never. deviates يعني كيف اجيبها بالعربي؟ بيشلق. Okay, so even by accident he wouldn't make sense. So he always writes bad poetry. This is Shadwell. Okay, even describes him as the master of dullness. Dullness, stupidity. He's the master of dullness. Okay, very strong. Too much satire by Dryden. This text is very also important. This is the last text for today. The secular mask, in 1700. Um, in a way, the year says something. This is the year this text was published. It says something about the text, because see, this text is trying to summarize the whole century, to wrap up the whole century, the 17th century. This is the last year of the century. He's in a way talking to the century, talking to the era. Thy wars, your wars brought nothing about. Thy lovers were all untrue. So the wars were for nothing, useless. The lovers were untrue, no real love. Thy words brought nothing about, thy lovers were all untrue. Tis well, an old age is out. It's okay, it's good that an old age is out and time to begin anew. Can you see the rhyme scheme in all the extracts? This is a pretense, sense, AA, things, kings, AA. You have about and throughout a new AB, AB. Can you count the syllables? Always with Dryden's, always perfect. Dryden, he was a neoclassical poet. Everything's perfect. The rhyme scheme, the number of the syllables, the feats, they're always the same number. Can you count the syllables? Thy words brought nothing about eight, seven, eight, eight. I guess eight. Thy was brought nothing about seven. Thy lovers were all untrue seven. Okay, so can you count? It's always perfect. This is John Dryden. Okay, and again, he's in a way discussing or talking to the age, to the century. Tis well, an old age is out, and time to begin anew. It's a good way to end an era and start a new one by poetry. This is Dryden, the secular mask. Okay, so that's it for today. A very short lecture, a very interesting one. And we're done with this age, okay? So now, in your books, now we are page 65. Now from 66, 67, the rest of this chapter, it's good to read it, but we won't discuss it, okay? We have some very interesting things. We have Afrabin. We have some texts, very interesting things. But from next time, we'll start with the Augustan age. With the Augustan age, page 77. Okay, so the rest of this chapter, will not be included in exams, but it's better, it's good to read it. So for the further discussion, tell me if you like the satire poetry, if you can mention some Arabic satire poetry, and then contextualize one of Dryden's extracts. We studied three extracts by Dryden. Contextualize one of them. I liked your contextualization for the previous contextualization I asked you to do, but some of you did not write enough. Some of you would just, write two, three words. Like this text is by Flan and that's it. No, it's not enough. Uh, you know, comment on the form, guys. Always when you contextualize, comment on the form, the shape, and then go to the themes, maybe the features of the age. Not all of them, only if they are included. If you can link between the form and the theme, it's better. If you can tell me how the form helps the meaning, how the meaning helps the form, it's always better. Mention the author, the title. Okay, so you have the basic information, the author and the title, then the form, the shape, how it looks like, the syllables, the rhyme scheme, the music, the alliteration. If there's something, a personification, any literary device, a pun, irony, all the things that we studied, and then comment on the meaning, comment on the themes. What features of the age can you find in this text? That's it. So for the midterm exam, this is the last, okay, the last lecture included in the exam. Okay, lecture 16, John Dryden. Okay, so the next lectures that we will study. So next week we'll have two more lectures, but they won't be included in the exam. Your exam is in Tuesday, not next Tuesday, the Tuesday after it. Okay, 27th, I guess. You will find this in your the date uh, in your pages. But it won't be for an hour. It's a short exam. Yes, it's a midterm, but it's short, so it won't be for 1 hour. Maybe half, 30 minutes, half an hour, or maybe less. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll tell you more details about the exam later on, inshallah. Tamam. Uh, but this is the last lecture that will be included in the exam for the midterm. Thank you, everyone, and see you inshallah next week with the next lecture, starting with the Augustan age. Goodbye.